Mom chose my brother's anniversary party over my wedding and ignored my achievements for years now. She's begging for forgiveness after losing her inheritance. Can you imagine your own mother choosing your brother's anniversary party over your wedding day? That was just the painful peak of a lifetime spent feeling invisible, utterly second best. But then, a stunning twist of fate, an inheritance that skipped her entirely, and suddenly, the woman who ignored me my whole life was begging for my forgiveness. Growing up, my name is Mason, and for as long as I can remember, there was always Ethan, my older brother, the golden child. We lived in suburban Chicago, in a nice two-story house my dad, an engineer, worked tirelessly for. He was often late, leaving Mom to manage everything, and that's where the crack started. Ethan, 4 years my senior, always had the cool space wallpaper, while I got the basic blue. At Christmas, his pile of presents dwarfed mine. Ethan needs more, he's older, Mom would say, but that excuse wore thin, year after year. The first time I truly understood something was deeply wrong was my 8th birthday. Mom had promised a magic-themed party, my dream, with a real magician Dad had hired. Everything was going great, friends, games, cake, until Mom pulled me aside, fork still in my hand. Mason, honey, I need to leave for a little while. Your brother needs help with his science project. I just stared. But it's my birthday party. I cried. Dad's here, and the magician is about to start. She kissed my forehead, quick and fleeting. Ethan's project is worth 30% of his grade. She didn't come back until everyone had left. Dad tried to make up for it, opening presents with me, making a fuss, but I knew if it had been Ethan's birthday, she wouldn't have left for anything. As we got older, the pattern just intensified. I was the better student, straight A's, while Ethan struggled for B's and C's. Yet, his C++ in math was celebrated with a special dinner, while my perfect report card got a dismissive good job and questions about why I wasn't more well-rounded. Like Ethan, I did have interests. I loved drawing. I had an eye for architecture. By 6th grade, my sketchbooks were filled with building designs. My art teacher, Mrs. Lawson, even called my parents about special weekend programs. Dad loved the idea. Mom, we can't afford it, she said, somehow finding money for Ethan's 3rd attempt at guitar lessons that very month. Thankfully, when I was 12, my dad's mom, Grandma Eleanor, noticed. She was a sharp, elegant woman who'd successfully run a real estate business. She started inviting me to stay with her on weekends. You have a special eye, Mason, she told me as I sketched her house. Not everyone can see spaces like you do. Those weekends became my refuge. She took me to museums, bought me real drawing supplies, and listened when I talked about my dreams. When I showed her my designs, she'd ask questions, offer suggestions, not just pat my head and change the subject to Ethan. At home, nothing changed. At 14, I won first place in a statewide design competition. The awards ceremony was on a Thursday evening, and I was so excited for both my parents to be there. I'm sorry, Mason, Mom said that morning. Ethan has a basketball game tonight, and you know how important team support is. Dad came alone. He took me out for ice cream afterward. I'm proud of you, son, he said, really proud. I tried to hide my hurt, but Dad saw it. Your mom loves you, he said carefully. Sometimes she doesn't see clearly. By high school, I developed a coping strategy, focus on my goals, spend time with Grandma Eleanor, and stop seeking Mom's approval. I had good friends, teachers who encouraged me, and Dad did his best. But being treated as less than by your own mother leaves scars. I became quieter, more self-sufficient, emotionally checking out of family gatherings where Ethan was inevitably the star. Senior year, college applications brought it all to a head. I had a 4.0, great SATs, an impressive architectural portfolio. Prestigious universities were interested, offering significant scholarships. Ethan, on the other hand, had barely graduated 4 years earlier and was on his 2nd attempt at community college. Yet, his acceptance into the local state university's business program, after finally getting his associates, was treated like he'd gotten into Harvard. My acceptance to Cornell's architecture program, with a substantial merit scholarship? Cornell is so far away, Mom's primary reaction. And so cold. Are you sure you wouldn't be happier somewhere closer to home? like where Ethan is going. Even Ethan looked uncomfortable. Dude, Cornell is Ivy League, he said. That's a big deal. It was one of the few times he acknowledged the disparity. I couldn't blame him, though. Why would anyone question being the favorite? When I packed for college, I told myself I was done. Done trying to earn her love. But for any unfavored child, making that decision and living it are two very different things. Cornell was exactly what I needed. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who shared my passion. Professors recognized my talent, classmates respected my work. Most importantly, I was hundreds of miles away from the constant reminder that I'd never measure up to Ethan in Mom's eyes. The program was demanding, but I thrived. My work consistently earned top marks, and by sophomore year, a professor connected me with a summer internship at a prestigious firm in NYC. When I called home, Dad was thrilled. That's incredible, Mason. An internship like that could set you up for your entire career. His genuine pride meant the world. Mom, that's nice, honey. Oh, did Dad tell you? Ethan's been made assistant manager at the electronics store. They gave him his own set of keys and everything. I bit my tongue. My internship was with an internationally renowned architecture firm. Ethan's promotion was at the same retail job he'd had since high school. That first year, I also met Audrey. She was studying art history. We literally bumped into each other in the library, and we talked for hours. I knew she was special. Her family was everything. Mine wasn't. Warm, supportive, celebrating achievements regardless. Her parents treated me like I mattered. They asked about my designs, showed genuine interest in my internship. Your work is fascinating, her father said, looking through my portfolio. You have a real talent for blending functional spaces with beautiful design. That simple comment nearly brought me to tears. It was the recognition I'd always craved from my own mother. My roommate, Trevor, also became a lifeline. He understood the demands of a creative field, and we bonded over all-nighters. Eventually, we became closer than Ethan and I ever were. Your mom really doesn't get how impressive your work is, does she? He asked one day, after overhearing a phone call home. She never has, I admitted. I'm not sure she ever will. Trevor just shook his head. That's her loss, man. And he was right. My college years progressed, building a circle of people who valued me. Audrey, Trevor, my professors, Audrey's family. They all saw something in me that my mother seemed blind to. During holiday breaks, the dynamic was unchanged. Ethan's mediocre achievements were celebrated, my successes acknowledged briefly. But now, Mom's indifference stung less. Grandma Eleanor remained my fiercest champion. She moved to a retirement community, but still insisted I visit. My drawings hung in her living room. She bragged about me to her friends. You're building a wonderful life, Mason, she told me once. On your own terms. I admire that tremendously. Senior year, the contrast between us hit a breaking point over the holidays. I'd won a prestigious student competition, including publication in an architectural journal, a huge accomplishment. Ethan, meanwhile, had finally completed his business degree after 6 years and had an interview lined up with a local insurance company. At Christmas dinner, Mom toasted Ethan's graduation and interview for nearly 5 minutes, gushing about his perseverance. When Dad tried to toast my award, she cut him off after a few sentences. And of course, we're proud of Mason, too. Now who wants pie? Later that night, alone in the kitchen, I confronted her. Mom, why don't my achievements ever seem to matter to you as much as Ethan's? She looked genuinely surprised. What are you talking about? Of course, they matter. No, they don't. I countered. I just won an award that could launch my career, and you barely acknowledged it. Meanwhile, Ethan finally finished a degree he should have completed 4 years ago, and you act like he's cured cancer. Her face hardened. That's not fair. Mason, Ethan has always struggled more. Things come easily to you. They don't come easily, Mom. I work incredibly hard. The difference is you notice his effort and ignore mine. You're being too sensitive, she said dismissively, turning to clean up, ending the conversation. Nothing changed, but at least I'd finally said it. As graduation approached, I learned I was graduating with highest honors, summa cum laude, with special recognition. I sent formal invitations months in advance. 2 weeks before the ceremony, Mom called. Mason, I'm not sure we'll be able to make it to your graduation after all. Ethan just found out he got the insurance job, and they're having a welcome dinner for new employees that same weekend. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. My college graduation happens once, Mom. This is one of the biggest days of my life. I know, honey, but this job is such a big opportunity for your brother. You know how hard he's worked for this. Dad drove up alone. Grandma Eleanor, 80 years old, insisted on making the trip too. Audrey and her parents were there, cheering loudly when my name was called. Mom sent a text. Congratulations. Sorry we couldn't be there. Ethan says hi from his company dinner. As I stood there, cap and gown, surrounded by people who chose to be there for me, I made a decision. I would no longer expect anything from my mother. I would build my own life, my own career, find my own happiness. It was the only way forward. Little did I know, the favoritism was about to reach even more painful heights. After graduation, I took a position with a cutting-edge architecture firm in Boston. Excellent salary, stellar reputation, and about 4 hours from home. Enough distance without completely cutting off family. Audrey had a curatorial assistant position at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, so we moved together, finding a charming apartment in Cambridge. My career took off. Within a year, one of my designs was incorporated into a major commercial project, earning me recognition and a bonus. I called home, hoping professional success might finally earn her approval. Dad was thrilled, asking detailed questions. Mom, that's nice, dear. Before immediately changing the subject to Ethan's new company car, a standard perk for all insurance agents at his level. Ethan, meanwhile, was struggling. The insurance job wasn't working out. Within 8 months, he quit to start his own business selling promotional products. Mom spoke of this as if he were a visionary entrepreneur, not someone who couldn't handle corporate structure. Your brother is so brave, she told me once. What she didn't mention, but Dad later revealed, was that she'd given Ethan $20,000 from her personal savings to launch this venture, money supposedly set aside for both of us to inherit. I didn't know how to tell you, Dad admitted. I tried to talk her out of it, but you know how she gets when it comes to your brother. Dad's health was declining. Years of stress took their toll. At 60, he was diagnosed with heart problems. I started traveling home more frequently to help, despite the discomfort of Mom's ongoing favoritism. Ethan, living 20 minutes away, rarely came by to help with yard work or repairs. Mom always had excuses. He's busy with his new business, or he and Rachel are looking at houses in better neighborhoods. Rachel, Ethan's wife, was a piece of work, never worked, complained of gifts didn't meet her standards. I once overheard her complaining about a $100 spa certificate for her birthday. Your brother's girlfriend got a similar one, and she's not even family yet, she huffed. To Ethan, what she didn't know was Audrey's gift came from Dad alone, while Rachel's was from both parents. The disparity continued, even in the smallest details. During this time, my relationship with Grandma Eleanor deepened. In her late 70s, she was sharp and increasingly concerned about the family dynamics. Your mother means well, she told me, during a private lunch, but she has never been able to see how her behavior affects you. And I worry about your father enabling it for so many years. Dad tries, I said instinctively. He does, she agreed. But trying isn't always enough, is it? Sometimes you have to actually stand up and say no. As Dad's health issues continued, he started having serious conversations about the future. One visit, he asked me to walk with him. I need to talk to you about something important, he said, as we walked slowly past familiar houses. It's about my will and what happens after I'm gone. My stomach tightened. Mason, I've watched how your mother has treated you compared to Ethan all these years. I've tried to make up for it, but I know it hasn't been enough. Dad, you don't have to. He held up a hand. Please let me finish. I've made some decisions about my estate that your mother doesn't know about. I've set up a separate trust for you that she can't access or change. I want to make sure you're treated fairly, at least in this one way. A complex mix of emotions hit me. Appreciation, sadness that it had come to this, and anxiety about Mom's reaction. There's something else, Dad continued. I've spoken to your grandmother about all this. She's concerned about how your mother might handle things when I'm gone. Before he could elaborate, he stumbled, his face pale. Dad, are you okay? He tried to smile, just a little dizzy. Let's head back. We never finished that conversation. 2 days later, Dad collapsed at work. A massive heart attack. He never regained consciousness. Just like that, the one person who truly saw me and my immediate family was gone. The day Dad died, everything changed. Mom's voice was choked with tears when she called. I booked a flight. Audrey right there, promising to meet me. At the hospital, Mom was holding Dad's hand. Ethan stood awkwardly in the corner, Rachel beside him, staring at her phone. He waited for you, Mom said, though I later learned he'd passed before I could possibly arrive. It was a nice thought, one of the few genuinely maternal things she'd said in years. The next few days were a blur of funeral arrangements. Despite being the younger son, I handled most of the practical matters. My architecture career had given me organizational skills. Mom leaned heavily on Ethan emotionally, asking him to stay at the house. When decisions about the service came up, she deferred to him on almost everything. What do you think your father would have wanted? She asked Ethan, despite me spending far more time with Dad recently. Actually, I interjected gently. Dad told me specifically he wanted Amazing Grace played. It was his mother's favorite hymn. Mom looked surprised, then annoyed. Well, Ethan thinks the other song would be more appropriate, and he knew your father's taste better. I bit my tongue. This wasn't the time. Grandma Eleanor caught my eye and gave a sad, knowing smile. The funeral was well attended. Dad was respected. I delivered one of the eulogies, crafting it carefully. My father taught me that success isn't measured by recognition, but by the quiet satisfaction of doing what's right. I said, my voice steady despite the grief. He showed me that sometimes the greatest strength is in silent support, and that love doesn't always need to be loud. To be real. Mom dabbed at her eyes, leaning against Ethan. Grandma Eleanor sat straight, dignified, her eyes never leaving me. At the graveside, the reality of Dad's absence hit me hard. The buffer was gone. The quiet advocate who had tried to balance the scales was gone. Audrey's hand was firm in mine. Next to me, unexpectedly, was Grandma Eleanor. She'd insisted on standing for the entire service. He was my son, she'd said. I'll stand for him one last time. After everyone else left, Grandma Eleanor asked me to stay. She pulled an envelope from her handbag. Harold wanted you to have this, she said, using Dad's formal name. He gave it to me last month, almost as if he knew. Inside was a letter in Dad's neat engineer's handwriting, dated just 3 weeks earlier. Mason, it began. If you're reading this, then the conversations we never finished will have to remain that way. I've spent too many years watching your mother favor your brother, making excuses to myself about why I didn't do more to stop it. The truth is, I was a coward in many ways. I didn't want to risk my marriage by challenging her directly, so I tried to make it up to you in smaller ways. I know now that wasn't enough. You have grown into an extraordinary man, despite, not because of how you were raised. Your talent, your kindness, your resilience, these are qualities that make me prouder than I can express. I've made arrangements to ensure that you are treated fairly in material matters after I'm gone. But I know that doesn't heal the emotional wounds of a lifetime. All I can say now is that I love you, son, completely and without reservation. You were never second best to me. I read it 3 times, carefully folding it into my pocket. Grandma Eleanor watched, tears in her eyes. He meant every word, she said softly. In the days after, Dad's estate had to be addressed. The family gathered in his attorney's office. Mom seemed confident, assuming everything would be split equally, or maybe more for Ethan. Mr. Winters adjusted his glasses. The will was straightforward. Mom got the house and its contents, a life insurance policy for security. Then came the surprise. The bulk of Dad's personal investments and savings had been placed in a separate trust, with me as the sole beneficiary. This can't be right, Mom interrupted. There must be a mistake. There's no mistake, Mrs. Walker, Mr. Winters said calmly. Your husband was very clear about his wishes. He updated his will last year. Mom turned to me, a mixture of shock and betrayal on her face. Did you know about this? I knew Dad was concerned about being fair, I said carefully, but I didn't know the details. The drive home was silent, tense. Mom went straight to her room. Ethan pulled me aside, unusually serious. Look, I know things haven't always been balanced between us, he said awkwardly. But did you have to take everything? Mom's really upset. I didn't take anything, Ethan. Dad made these decisions on his own. And Mom is well provided for. She has the house, the life insurance, and her own savings. I didn't mention a significant portion of her savings had already funded his business. Still, it feels like you turned Dad against us somehow. I almost laughed at the irony. Trust me, that's not what happened. In the following weeks, I returned to Boston, trying to process everything. The grief, the complicated feelings about Dad's final attempt to balance the scales, the newly strained relationship with Mom and Ethan. Audrey was my rock. She listened, held me, gently encouraged me to focus on healing. One evening, 2 months after Dad's death, we were walking along the Charles River, discussing a weekend trip we'd planned to take with Dad, a visit to Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water. We should still go, Audrey said. Your dad would have wanted that. You're right. I agreed. He was so excited about it. We stopped, watching the sunset. In that moment, I realized how completely Audrey had become my family. The one person who saw me clearly, loved me without conditions or comparisons. Marry me, I said, the words just spilling out. Audrey's eyes went wide. What? Marry me, I repeated, more confidently. I don't have a ring yet, and this isn't how I plan to do this, but I know one thing for certain. I want to build a life with you. Her smile was brighter than the sunset. Yes, she said simply. Absolutely yes. That weekend, we went to Falling Water. Standing on the iconic balcony, I felt Dad's presence. Strongly. He would have loved this place. And he would have loved Audrey. When we returned, I bought a ring. We shared the news. Audrey's parents were thrilled. Trevor organized an impromptu celebration. Grandma Eleanor sent a beautiful handwritten letter, expressing her joy and a generous check. Mom's reaction was considerably more subdued. Well, that's nice, she said. Have you set a date yet? Not officially, but we're thinking next spring. Oh, you might want to reconsider that. Timing, she said quickly. Ethan and Rachel are planning something special for their 10th anniversary around then. They're thinking of renewing their vows. I felt the familiar sting of being secondary, but pushed past it. We'll keep that in mind, but we'd really like a spring wedding. What I didn't know then was this conversation was the prelude to the most painful example, yet of where I stood in her priorities. Audrey and I began planning our wedding with excitement. We found a beautiful venue, a restored, historic building, with limited availability, so we secured a late April date. Perfect. We sent save the date cards in June. I called Mom personally to confirm. Yes, it came yesterday, she said. April 27th. I put it on my calendar. Great, I said, relieved. We're really excited about the venue. That's nice, dear. Oh, before I forget, Ethan and Rachel stopped by yesterday with the most wonderful news. They're planning a big anniversary celebration for their 10th. They're thinking of doing a vow renewal ceremony and then a big party. Isn't that lovely? Sure, I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. When are they planning to do it? They're looking at spring dates. Rachel has always loved spring events. A sense of foreboding crept over me, but I pushed it aside. Surely, they wouldn't choose the same weekend. Even in my family, there had to be limits. For the next few months, wedding planning went smoothly. Trevor was my best man. We chose caterers, photographers. Audrey found her dress. I designed unique invitations. Throughout this, Mom called regularly, but rarely about our wedding. Instead, she'd spend most of each call talking about Ethan and Rachel's celebration, which was growing more elaborate by the week. They're thinking of having it at the country club, she told me in September. Rachel wants to wear her original wedding dress, but they're adding a blue sash to symbolize their years together. So creative. I tried to be supportive, but it was hard when she showed so little interest in my wedding. In late October, as we finalized our formal invitations, I received a text from Ethan that made my stomach drop. Hey bro, just wanted to give you a heads up. We've scheduled our anniversary party for the 27th of April. Mom's super excited about helping us plan it. Hope there's no conflict with anything you've got going on. I stared at the phone in disbelief. This was no coincidence. We had sent save the dates months ago. Mom had confirmed the date. This was deliberate. I called Ethan immediately. Did you seriously schedule your anniversary party on my wedding day? I asked. No. Preamble. Oh, is that the same day? I didn't realize, he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. Ethan, we sent save the dates in June. Mom confirmed she received it. How could you not? No. Look, it wasn't intentional, he said defensively. This was the only week in the country club had available that worked with Rachel's parents' schedule. They're coming in from Arizona. Can you change it? We've already put deposits down on everything, and our invitations are about to go out. There was a pause. I don't think that's possible. We've already paid the non-refundable deposit, and Rachel's really set on this date. Can't you guys move yours? You haven't sent the actual invitations yet, right? A surge of anger so intense I had to take a deep breath. No, Ethan. We can't move our wedding. We sent save the dates 4 months ago specifically so people could plan accordingly. You knew the date. Well, this puts Mom in a tough position, he said, as if that were the primary concern. I'll talk to Mom myself, I said, ending the call before I said something I'd truly regret. When I called Mom, she answered with a cheerfulness that only intensified my suspicion. Mason, I was just thinking about you. I found these lovely napkins that would be perfect for your reception. Mom, did you know that Ethan and Rachel scheduled their anniversary party on the same day as my wedding? Her tone changed immediately. Oh yes, about that. It's unfortunate, but it was the only date that worked for them. The country club is very exclusive, you know. Mom, we sent save the dates months ago. You knew when our wedding was scheduled. I know, dear, but this is their 10th anniversary. It's a very significant milestone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And my wedding isn't significant. Of course it is. But you have to understand, they've been planning this for ages. No, they haven't. We announced our date in June. They just booked this recently. She sighed, as if I were being unreasonable. Mason, I don't understand why you're making such a big deal about this. There are plenty of other weekends. Not for us, Mom. Our venue is booked, deposits are paid, and guests have already made travel arrangements. We're not changing our wedding date. There was a long pause. Well, I don't know what you expect me to do. I can't be in 2 places at once. And there it was. The moment I had dreaded. She was actually considering missing my wedding. I expect you to be at my wedding, Mom. I'm your son, and I'm getting married. Once. You're putting me in an impossible position, she said, her voice wounded. Ethan will be devastated if I'm not there for his special day. And I won't be devastated if you miss my wedding. I asked incredulously. That's not what I meant. I need some time to figure this out. I was too upset to think clearly. I called Audrey, who rushed home to find me pacing. She's actually considering not coming. I told her, struggling to process it. My own mother might skip my wedding for my brother's anniversary party. Audrey's face reflected my pain. Oh, Mason, I'm so sorry. What kind of mother does that? I asked, the hurt child inside me finally giving voice to the question I'd carried my whole life. I don't know, Audrey said softly, taking my hands. But I do know that we're going to have a beautiful wedding, surrounded by people who truly love and support us. And if your mother makes the wrong choice, that's her loss. In the weeks that followed, the situation deteriorated. Mom began suggesting compromises that all involved us changing our plans. A morning ceremony for us, an evening reception for them, or moving our wedding to Sunday. Each suggestion made it clearer. In her mind, our wedding was the flexible event, not their anniversary party. Years of subtle and not-so-subtle favoritism had culminated in this. My once-in-a-lifetime wedding day was less important than my brother's party, celebrating a marriage that, from all appearances, wasn't even particularly happy. Grandma Eleanor was outraged. This has gone too far, she said firmly. I'm going to speak to your mother. I never learned exactly what was said, but afterward, Mom stopped pushing. Instead, she went silent on the subject entirely, neither confirming nor denying her attendance. As our wedding day approached and final RSVPs were due, I made one last attempt. I called Mom and asked directly if she would be attending. Her response broke something in me I hadn't realized was still intact. Mason, I've thought about this a lot, and I just can't miss Ethan and Rachel's celebration. They've put so much into planning it, and Rachel would never forgive me. I hope you can understand. I couldn't speak for several seconds. When I finally found my voice, It was steady, but cold. I understand perfectly, Mom. You've made your choice clear. Not just about the wedding, but about our relationship going forward. Don't be dramatic, Mason. It's just one day. It's my wedding day, I said quietly. And you're choosing to attend an anniversary party instead. That says everything I need to know about where I stand with you. After hanging up, I sat in silence for a long time. The pain was acute, but beneath it was a strange sense of clarity. The dynamic that had defined my childhood and adult relationship with my mother had finally been laid completely bare. No more room for excuses or rationalization. My mother had chosen explicitly and unambiguously to prioritize my brother over me on what should have been one of the most important days of my life. And in doing so, she had finally freed me from the hope that things might someday be different. Our wedding day dawned clear and beautiful. The historic building looked spectacular, adorned with white flowers and greenery. As I stood in a side room, Trevor straightened my tie. One toast before we go out there, he said, raising a small glass of whiskey. To building the family you deserve. I smiled, genuinely touched. Thank you for everything. Grandma Eleanor had arrived the day before, elegant and determined, taking her place in the front row where my mother should have been. You look handsome, Mason, she said, patting my cheek. Your father would have been so proud today. Those words meant everything. As I took my place at the altar, I looked out at the guests. Audrey's large, supportive family filled several rows. My friends, her friends. The only glaringly empty seats were where my immediate family should have been. But as the music began and Audrey appeared, those empty seats ceased to matter. She was radiant, her eyes locked on mine as she walked toward our future. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that whatever family wounds I carried, they would not define the family we would build together. The ceremony was everything we hoped for. We had written our own vows, and as I promised Audrey to cherish her and support her dreams, I felt a sense of healing beginning to take root. At the reception, Trevor's best man's speech carefully avoided any mention of my absent mother and brother. Instead, he focused on our friendship, my character, and his admiration for the relationship Audrey and I had built. I've watched Mason overcome challenges with grace and determination, he said, raising his glass. And I've seen how completely Audrey accepts and loves him for exactly who he is. Together, they remind us all what family should really be about. The evening was filled with dancing, laughter, and genuine celebration. Audrey's parents treated me like their own son. Late in the evening, Grandma Eleanor found a quiet moment. I want you to know something, she said, her voice strong. What your mother did today was wrong, deeply wrong. And while I've tried to understand her behavior over the years, I can no longer make excuses for it. I nodded, appreciating her directness. But I also want you to know this, she continued. You have built a beautiful life, Mason. You've chosen love and growth over bitterness. That shows remarkable strength of character. The next morning, as Audrey and I left for our honeymoon, I made the conscious decision not to check social media. I knew I'd see posts from Mom or Ethan about their anniversary celebration. Instead, I focused on our beginning, our 2-week trip to Italy. It wasn't until we returned that I saw the posts. Dozens of photos from Ethan and Rachel's anniversary party. Mom featured prominently, happy and proud, posing with the couple, cutting their cake. The caption spoke of family traditions and celebrating a decade of love with those who matter most. The exclusion was so complete, so deliberate, it left no room for ambiguity. I hadn't just been left out. I had been erased from the family narrative entirely. After seeing those posts, I made a decision I'd considered for years. I went no contact with my mother. No dramatic announcement, no explanatory email. I simply stopped, responding to her occasional texts, declined her infrequent calls. For 2 years, Audrey and I built our life together without my mother in it. My career flourished, leading to a major promotion. Audrey secured a full curator position. We bought our first home, a fixer-upper, and I put my design skills to practical use. We discussed starting a family, planning for children who would know what unconditional love felt like from the start. Grandma Eleanor remained a steady presence, delighted by our progress. Meanwhile, through her, I learned Ethan's business was struggling. Mom continued to provide financial support, depleting her savings further. It was during this period that I received a prestigious architectural award. The ceremony was covered in industry publications, and word apparently got back to my hometown. The first text from Mom and months arrived shortly after. Just saw about your award. Congratulations. Would love to hear more about it. I didn't respond. The time when her approval would have meant something had long passed. More texts followed, each acting as if there had been no estrangement, no missed wedding, no 2 years of silence. Thinking of you today. Saw a building on television that reminded me of your style. Hope you and Audrey are well. I showed them to Audrey. What do you think she wants? I asked. I'm not sure, she said, but I think you should trust your instincts about whether her interest is genuine. My instinct said it wasn't. I continued no contact. Then, about 27 months after our wedding, I received an unexpected call from Grandma Eleanor's retirement community. Eleanor had been hospitalized after a fall, and the prognosis wasn't good. I immediately booked flights for Audrey and me. At the hospital, we found Mom already there, sitting awkwardly in the waiting room. Our eyes met briefly before I looked away, searching for Eleanor's doctor. The news wasn't what I'd hoped for. At 82, Eleanor's body wasn't responding to treatment. The doctor spoke candidly about preparing for the worst. Over the next few days, Audrey and I practically lived at the hospital. Mom appeared daily, though. We managed to coordinate our visits to minimize interaction. The one time we ended up in Eleanor's room simultaneously, the tension was palpable until Eleanor herself addressed it. For goodness sake, she said weakly from her bed. I'm too old and too tired for this. Diane, go get yourself some coffee. I need to speak with Mason alone. After Mom left, Eleanor fixed me with that direct gaze that always saw through pretense. Mason, I need to tell you something important. I moved closer, taking her frail hand. What is it, Grandma? I've made decisions about my estate, she said, her voice gaining strength. Decisions your mother won't like, but that I believe are right. Grandma, you don't need to. Let me finish, she interrupted. I've watched for decades as your mother favored Ethan, making excuse after excuse for behavior that didn't deserve it. I saw how it hurt you, and how it hurt your father to witness it. I'm making my own statement with what I leave behind. I didn't know what to say, so I simply squeezed her hand. You've made me proud, Mason. She continued. You've built a good life despite the hurt. You've chosen love over bitterness. That's a rare strength. 3 days later, with Audrey and me at her bedside, Eleanor passed away peacefully. Mom had left just an hour earlier. The funeral was a small, quick service. Mom and I maintained our distance, communicating only when absolutely necessary. It wasn't until the reading of the will that the full impact of Eleanor's decisions became clear. The family gathered in the same law office where Dad's will had been read 3 years earlier. Eleanor's estate was substantial. Small bequests to charities and friends, then to the family. To my grandson, Ethan Walker, I leave the sum of $10,000, with the hope that he will use it wisely. I saw Ethan's face fall at the modest amount. Rachel made no attempt to hide her disappointment. To my daughter-in-law, Diane Walker, I leave my collection of family photographs and personal correspondence, that she might better understand the values that guided our family. Mom sat very still, her expression unreadable. To my grandson, Mason Walker, and his wife Audrey, I leave the remainder of my estate, including my home, investments, and all other assets not specifically designated. Mason has demonstrated the character, responsibility, and compassion that I value most, and I trust him to be a good steward of what I leave behind. The room went completely silent. The remainder represented well over $2 million in assets. Additionally, Miss Reed continued, I am instructed to deliver this letter to Diane Walker. She handed Mom a sealed envelope. With shaking hands, Mom opened it and began to read. I couldn't see the contents, but I watched her face go pale, then flush with what might have been shame. When the meeting concluded, Mom left quickly. Ethan approached me in the parking lot, a mixture of anger and confusion. What the hell, Mason? How did you manipulate Grandma into this? I didn't manipulate anyone, Ethan. This was her decision. Right, he scoffed. First Dad, now Grandma. Somehow you've convinced everyone that you deserve everything. That's not what happened, I said, tiredly. And honestly, Ethan, after everything with the wedding, I don't think you get to play the victim here. Rachel, silent until now, suddenly spoke up. This is about the wedding? Seriously? You're still holding a grudge because your brother had an anniversary party the same day? Get over it. I looked at her incredulously. It wasn't just any day. It was my wedding day, and my mother chose to attend your party instead. So, yes, that matters to me. Before it could escalate further, Audrey gently took my arm. We should go, she said quietly. This isn't the time or place. She was right, as she so often was. We left, but I knew this wasn't the end of the family drama. The inheritance had shifted the power dynamic in a way that would force long-buried issues to the surface. Sure enough, 3 days later, I received a text from Mom asking if we could meet. After discussing it with Audrey, I agreed to coffee at a neutral location. What I didn't expect was that this meeting would begin the most difficult and potentially healing chapter in my relationship with my mother. The coffee shop was busy. Public places minimize emotional scenes, and after 30 years of navigating my mother's favoritism, I had developed a strong aversion to conflict. Mom was already there, looking older, with new lines around her eyes and mouth that spoke of recent stress. Thank you for coming, she said, as I sat down. I nodded, waiting. I suppose you're wondering what was in the letter from your grandmother, she began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. If you want to tell me, I'll listen, I said neutrally. She took a deep breath. Eleanor didn't mince words. She wrote that she was excluding me from her will because of how I had treated you throughout your life, particularly my decision to miss your wedding. She said that by consistently favoring Ethan, I had failed as a mother to you, and that the inheritance decision was her final attempt to balance the scales. I was surprised by her candor. The mom I knew would have softened the message, reframed it, to make herself the victim. She also included copies of letters your father had written to her over the years. Mom continued. Letters expressing his concern about how I treated you compared to Ethan. I had no idea he had felt that way so strongly. I thought about Dad's private struggles. Dad tried to create balance where he could, I said. Mom looked down at her coffee. Mason, I know. You probably won't believe this, but I never intended to hurt you. In my mind, I was just giving Ethan the extra support he needed. He always struggled more than you did. It was the same justification she'd offered for years. But now, sitting across from her, after everything, I couldn't let it pass. That's not true, Mom. Ethan struggled because you enabled him to star. You cleaned up his messes, funded his failures, and celebrated his mediocrity while ignoring my achievements. You created the very dynamic you used to justify your favoritism. She flinched, but didn't deny it. After a moment, she spoke again. When you were born, you were so different from Ethan. You were quieter, more self-sufficient. You seemed to need me less, while Ethan was always demanding attention. It became a pattern that I didn't know how to break. You could have broken it by showing up for my wedding, I said, sharper than intended. That was your chance to show me I mattered, too, and you chose not to take it. To my surprise, tears filled her eyes. I know. There's no excuse for that. None. I've had a lot of time to think since Eleanor's letter, and I keep coming back to that decision. It was unforgivable. Then why did you do it? I asked the question that had haunted me for 2 years. She was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. When she did, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because I was a coward. Because Ethan and Rachel pressured me relentlessly, and I was afraid of losing my relationship with them if I chose you. Because I had spent so many years building my identity around being the mother Ethan needed that I didn't know how to be the mother you deserved. Her admission stunned me. In all our years of conflict, Mom had never acknowledged her behavior so directly. The irony, she continued, is that I lost my relationship with you anyway. And now Ethan barely speaks to me since the will reading. He blames me for not somehow changing Eleanor's mind. I felt a complex mix of emotions. Vindication that my grandmother had seen the truth so clearly. Sadness for the relationship I'd never had. And a strange, unexpected flicker of hope that perhaps, at long last, Mom was beginning to understand the damage. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Mason, she said, meeting my eyes. I don't deserve it. But I am asking for a chance to try to do better, too. Be in your life on whatever terms you set. The money doesn't matter to me. What matters is that I finally realized what I've lost by my own choices. I wanted to believe her. But after a lifetime of disappointment, trust didn't come easily. I need time to think about this, I said finally. And if I do decide to give you another chance, there would have to be boundaries, clear ones. She nodded. Quickly. Of course. Anything. I need to talk to Audrey too. This affects her as well. I understand. And Mason, thank you for meeting me today. I know you didn't have to. As I drove home, I remembered something Grandma Eleanor had told me. Forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about creating the possibility for a different future. Audrey was waiting, with her characteristic patience and wisdom. I told her everything, including Mom's unprecedented admission. What do you think? I asked her. Am I crazy to even consider giving her another chance? Audrey considered it carefully. I don't think you're crazy, but I do think you need to protect yourself. If you decide to rebuild a relationship with your mother, it should be on terms that acknowledge the past, rather than pretending it didn't happen. And what would that look like? Maybe starting small. Coffee once a month, clear boundaries about what topics are open for discussion, and most importantly, an understanding that if she falls back into old patterns, you'll step away again. Over the next few weeks, I thought deeply. The hurt child in me craved the maternal love I'd never fully received. The rational adult recognized that even if Mom was genuinely remorseful, decades of behavior patterns wouldn't change overnight. Finally, I called her and suggested another meeting, this time with Audrey present. We met at a quiet restaurant, and I laid out my conditions for cautiously reopening our relationship. First, I need an acknowledgement that what happened throughout my childhood, and especially with the wedding, was wrong. Not just regrettable or a misunderstanding, but wrong. Mom nodded. It was wrong. All of it. I failed you as a mother, and there's no justification for that. Second, if we're going to have any relationship moving forward, it has to be balanced. That means no more talking endlessly about Ethan and his life while showing minimal interest in mine. I understand, she said. I want to know about your life, Mason. Really. Third, we start small. Monthly meetings like this. We build trust gradually. That seems fair, she agreed. And finally, I need you to understand that this is conditional. If you revert to old patterns, if you dismiss my feelings or prioritize Ethan in hurtful ways again, I will cut contact permanently this time. She looked pained, but nodded. I accept those terms. I know I have to earn your trust, and I'm willing to try. The next several months were a strange, new chapter. Mom made visible efforts to change, asking questions about my work, genuinely listening. She brought photos of my childhood I'd never seen, sharing memories from a perspective I hadn't heard. She even tentatively began to build a relationship with Audrey. There were missteps, of course. Old habits emerged occasionally, like when she automatically defended Ethan. But unlike before, she caught herself, apologized, and tried to do better. 6 months into this cautious reconciliation, Audrey and I invited her to dinner at our home for the first time. As we gave her a tour, showing the renovations I designed and implemented, she stopped. In what would eventually be a nursery. Are you planning? She asked, looking at the half-painted walls. We're expecting, Audrey confirmed, smiling. Due in February. Mom's eyes filled with tears. You're going to be wonderful parents, she said softly. Both of you. It wasn't a dramatic declaration of change. There was no movie moment where all past hurts were suddenly healed. But in that simple acknowledgement of our shared future, I felt something shift. The possibility of a different kind of relationship. Not perfect, not without its scars, but perhaps finally based on seeing each other clearly. As for Ethan, our relationship remained distant. The inheritance had created a rift his pride wouldn't allow him to bridge. Mom occasionally mentioned attempts to connect with him, but I made it clear that my boundaries included not being her emotional support regarding Ethan. That's something you need to work through with him, I told her, or with a therapist, but not with me. She accepted. This, another small sign of change. In the years since, we've built a cautious but increasingly genuine relationship. When our daughter, Eleanor, named after her great-grandmother, was born, Mom became the grandmother I had doubted she could be. Present, supportive, and careful to give Audrey and me space to parent on our terms. The trust builds slowly, one interaction at a time. There are still moments when old wounds throb, when a careless word or forgotten promise triggers memories of a lifetime of being second best. But there are also new memories forming. Mom teaching little Eleanor to bake cookies, showing up reliably for birthdays and school events, respecting our family boundaries. I've come to understand that the inheritance wasn't just about money. It was Grandma Eleanor's final lesson to all of us about values, consequences, and the true meaning of family. The financial security it provided was significant, but the clarity it forced was the real gift. Looking back on this journey, from neglected child to confident adult, I realized that family wounds don't heal in straight lines. Reconciliation doesn't erase history. It builds something new that acknowledges the past while refusing to be defined by it. The child who craved his mother's approval has become a man who understands his own worth, regardless of others' ability to recognize it. And that, perhaps, is the most valuable inheritance of all. So, I want to ask you, have you ever had to establish boundaries with family members who hurt you? How did you balance forgiveness with self-protection? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to stand up for your own worth. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that sometimes the family we build matters more than the family we're born into.